Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second day of the fifth National Summit on Episodic Disabilities and Employment. Thank you so much for being here. We would like to open by acknowledging the land that the Realize office, as well as my home, sit on. I am a white settler, as are my parents, who came here 51 years ago from the UK and Ireland. I would like to affirm that colonialism and the attitudes and practices that have accompanied it contribute to systemic discrimination and violence against Indigenous people across Turtle Island. I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, and throughout history acknowledging that these lands also became home to the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, the Métis, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Part of reconciliation is supporting decolonization through naming injustice and advocating for systemic change. I am grateful for the continued teachings and knowledge shared with me by Indigenous people and stand firm in my ongoing commitment to creating equity and inclusion through the recognition of rights, respect, cooperation, and partnership. Thank you. Before we jump back into the day's exciting content, I will just take a moment to review some housekeeping. The summit is being simultaneously broadcast in English and en français, as well as in American Sign Language et la langue des signes québécoise. The sign language interpreters can be pinned on your screen throughout the meeting. Nous sommes heureux d'offrir l'interprétation simultanée en français aujourd'hui. Donc, pour ceux qui ont besoin, veuillez cliquer sur le petit globe en bas à droite de votre écran pour voir l'option pour le français, ainsi que l'option pour couper le son original. For those who find this feature helpful, you can also find links in the chat now to external captioning in both French and English. I would like to note that this event is being recorded, and that means that the images, slides, and voices of speakers will be captured, not those of the symposium attendees. The agenda for today is available on the Realize website. If you would like to review today's sessions or follow along with us, there is now a link in the chat. Yesterday was an excellent day. I hope that some of you had an opportunity to be there. There were so many rich discussions, and I just want to highlight a couple of the things that we learned. Workplace relationships thrive when there is an openness to feedback between employees and leadership. Flexible workplaces are everywhere, and people are so creative. Business owners and leadership really have expanded, and I learned so much from these individuals lately. One thing that I think is really interesting for us to learn and to take on a little bit is that it's okay for people in the service industry to sit down. And I just think we need to take that on a bit. And then lastly, I just want to mention how compassion really leads the way when we're talking about creating disability-aware spaces. Flexibility and openness to acknowledging that people have different needs at work and are still able to get the job done. So if you are interested in any of the sessions that we had yesterday, there will be a recording available on the Realize YouTube channel sometime in June. I am going to now pass the mic over to Addison Brash, who is our training lead at Realize, and they will introduce our keynote speaker for day 2. Unfortunately, she hasn't signed in yet, I have just learned. So I am going to put it out to the few folks who gave me a little thumbs up when I was talking about yesterday's sessions. If you could pop into the Q&A anything that was a highlight for you. I see that someone has already done this, and Leslie has noted a couple of things in their comment here, that there is no clear standards or consistent consequences for not following the accommodation is the law across provinces and territories. This puts employees at a real disadvantage, and I absolutely agree. Are there best practices for advancement? Well, we are in an interesting time in Canada that we have the Accessible Canada Act passed in 2019, and there are still developments and still things that employers and other spaces are working to use to improve accessibility as well as accommodation in the workplace. Part of the work that disability organizations like Realize and many others, we offer education. Some of it's free, some of it's a fee, but this education creates opportunities for awareness building, for inviting employers to consider changing things, to update policy so that it's not 10 or 15 or 25 years old, that it reflects some of the changes that as a country, as a society, we have begun to take on recently. Best practices for shifting the awareness of accommodation often comes down to education and connection with people. So, thank you for your question. There's one more comment or a couple more comments in the chat here. Someone says that I loved the way texting one key word to mean I'm not coming in today due to my episodic disability with my boss. I also love this. It just stops all of the, oh, what am I going to write? How do I say it? Just write the word apple and your boss knows exactly what you're talking about. Someone has also noted the concept of peak hours, where an employee needs to be present at work, but can flex the remaining hours in order to keep people job attached, in order to keep people employed. Thanks for noting that. Someone also says, I particularly enjoyed hearing from the current speakers telling us about improvements and pitfalls in real time. Another comment is that someone was very grateful to be in community with disability advocacy for the self and each other from coast to coast. I am going to now hand things over to Addison, who will introduce our keynote speaker. Thank you all for contributing a few suggestions and notes from yesterday's event. I'll be back soon. Bye.